Okay, so our next agenda item is odor from the wastewater treatment plant. And this is a report of from work that's being done with a consultant. This item was referred by Councilmember Reynolds, so I want to turn this over to her for opening remarks.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to briefly introduce this subject. Most of you are familiar with it by now. I've been representing the part of the 11th District that is near Leestown Road for the past 2 years with redistricting. And since that time, my office has received complaints about odor in the area on and off. This past summer, at the end of the summer, those complaints escalated severely. I had probably 50 at one time, then later up to 80 people or more complaining about the smell. People that work there, people that live there in and around the wastewater treatment plant that is kind of behind Leestown Road. So I set a meeting and went to Director Martin, and we had probably 50 people, or I don't know, a large group of people from two different neighborhoods meet, and we talked about why it was hard to localize the smell. And then Director Martin decided to look into it more, and then the administration as well. So I wanted to ask Director Martin to give an update of where we are now, what happened after that in terms of some different people that we brought in to look at the odor and where we're going from here. I want to thank him for his work on this issue, which has been really challenging with both of our wastewater treatment plants. I want to thank Councilmember Menares, Plowman, and Lynch, who have also been dealing with constituent complaints. And I also really just want to highlight that I want to thank the administration for signing an executive emergency order to bring in some people to help us out. So I'll turn it over to Director Martin. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. You did the introduction for me, so I'll just jump right into the agenda. Really today, what I want to focus on is bullet 3. That's why I'm here. But we really need to cover bullets 1 and 2 in order to be able to frame what we're going to talk about as far as 3, and then leave enough time for questions. Sources and reasons of why you have odors in sewers. Decomposition is going on all the time in a sewer system. And with lots of pipelines, lots of air release valves, treatment plants, and pump stations, there's many points at which that can happen. We operate 2 treatment plants, but we have 7 drainage areas. So 5 of those drainage areas pump back over into a different one in order for it to make to a treatment plant. And so those long times of travel without oxygen typically is what will generate odors. And there's so many different places for it to come out. Manholes, we have 36,000 manholes in Lexington. Every house and every structure has a vent pipe that comes out of the roof of it. We have air release valves on some of those pipelines as well. Typically a pressurized line, it follows the contours of the land, and so it goes up and down, and all those high spots all trap air in there, and there's vents in there designed to release air, and so typically that's going to be a foul odor that comes with it. And then the treatment plants and pump stations are very obvious. You see in red there, I'm trying to characterize how long it takes sometimes for a particle of sewage to make it to one of those treatment plants. Typically under normal circumstances, weather impacts this dramatically, as it every fall it seems like we have an uptick in odor, particularly because of the lack of rainfall. You know, the sanitary sewer is designed to be separate, but it's not really. There's always water getting in from some other source. And so when it stops raining in late summer, early fall, you see this uptick in complaints. And initially, before I started talking to Councilmember Reynolds and Councilmember Menares, that's what I thought we were seeing. I'll talk about that in a slide later. This is more than just weather related, but I wanted to point that out, is that weather is oftentimes a big contributor. And I've really wondered to myself whether or not that all of the work that we've done in the consent decree in making the system bigger and in order to handle wet weather, this is the opposite effect of that nobody really anticipated. I also will note on here that fall seems seems to be the bigger time, not only because of the lack of rain, but it's warm in the daytime and cool in the evening, and it has a tendency to trap whatever's in the air in the lower areas, such as around the treatment plants, which is where they are at. Okay, so one slide I'm going to devote to what we do right now. Basically, at the treatment plants and all the Class A pump stations, those are point source treatment. Basically, you've got ductwork in those buildings or in those structures that are pulling all the foul air to a treatment device, either a chemical scrubber or an activated carbon type of unit. The idea is to collect it and treat it because it's there. In the collection system, we feed chemicals, basically a oxygen-based chemical, because we're trying to provide oxygen to prevent the formation of odors. The lack of oxygen in the system, as I mentioned before, is what makes things go septic. So typically you're feeding a nitrate or some other type of oxygen to try to create an abundance of that in solution to where then the odors don't generate themselves. We also do treatment at specific air release valves because a lot of those are located in somebody's backyard. We've had complaints in the past, so we have inserts that go in the manhole where this air release valve is, roughly about 30 of those that are active right now. But we have 80-some pump stations. Each of them have these pressurized lines. We do not have them at every one of these locations. All right, so the meat of things is the escalation of complaints, and it says 2023 only because I kind of had that in mind when I did. It has continued. It has not gone away. If anything, I think that our customers are having a lot more patience. They're beginning to understand what the issue is, and that hopefully this presentation will help them. I've got a couple of maps up here just to kind of illustrate things. On the left, that was the number of complaints that I was getting through LexCall up until about October 20th. Well, as it turns out, all of the calls were going to Councilmember Reynolds. All the calls were going to Councilmember Lynch, and they weren't making into this. So the lesson I have learned from this is that you can't, LexCall is a great service, but the conversation oftentimes is going on social media. It's going on, you all know this already, is that paying more attention to what's going on in Nextdoor and on Facebook is going to be important for us moving forward. Because it really elevated itself when that same thing got applied to West Hickman. Before October 20, we had a concentrated thing around close to the park area and stuff, but as word got out, Councilmember Reynolds mentioned a public meeting that we had at Town Branch with folks in her district. We had a similar one with Councilmember Menares with her district as well, and here came all the complaints. I can tell you this too, anecdotally, I'm inside that second zone. The first zone is within 1 mile of the treatment plant. The second one is 2 miles, and I'm in that one. So I've been out a lot as far as talking to a lot of people and stuff like that, trying to get a better understanding of when these odors happen and why they're happening and what they're smelling, because they seem to go maddeningly random. There's some days that you'd think there would be odors and they're not there, and other times I'm shocked. But what we've done in response to this up to this point is basically we've tried to be able to treat particular units that my nose told me is not working well. Before we had the meeting with the Meadowthorpe folks, I had my guys lift me up in a bucket truck so I could smell the exhaust of some of our scrubbers. Most of them are 15 feet off the ground. And she remembers this. I described one as awful and one as less than awful, only because it wasn't as bad as the first one. So we regenerated those units with some success, not the kind of a success that I would like to have, but you'll see in a later slide, it did help it a little bit. At West Hickman, I went out there a lot of times at really weird hours because I live there. I went out one morning, one of those cold mornings, and I see steam coming out of the headworks in places that I don't think it should be coming. And so what we found is that some of that ductwork had been compromised, and so they cleaned it out and rebalanced the odor collection system for it, and I think it's performing better. These ash tank that we have at West Hickman, I found that on Thanksgiving morning. I went out there at dawn and steam's coming out of some place that it shouldn't have been coming out of. We've regenerated that and we've cleaned it twice. We've probably spent $20,000 on that piece of equipment, and it's still not performing at a level that I would expect it to, and I'll talk about that in a second. Lastly is that, trusting our noses. I'll be honest with you, I've worked around sewage my whole life, and so I think I'm a little bit nose blind compared to other people, and I think we would all agree, people smell things differently, just the same as they hear or see differently. And so we've created a unit price contract to be able to acquire the monitoring equipment that will help us try to be able to better diagnose when these things are happening and at what level that they're happening. The big thing that we did, and Councilmember Reynolds mentioned this, was sign the emergency order that brought Webster Environmental to town to help us with this. Webster, that's their specialty, is they do odor control. That's their main course of business. And so what we had them do is come in and sample all of the high-risk locations at the treatment plant and provide us recommendations on what type of equipment needed to upgrade. No more of the searching in a dark room trying to find the switch that turns the odor off, because one, I don't think it exists, but also it's maddeningly frustrated to just go about things so randomly. The data that they found will be priceless to us, and so I've got a snapshot here of the data that they found. This is Town Branch, and it is an odor emissions rate graph. Basically, you can sample a concentration coming out of something, but if the exhaust rate is very low, it in itself doesn't contribute a lot, as opposed to as something has a medium level and it's got 10 big fans blowing it out, it's going to have a bigger impact to the surrounding area. So that's what they tried to do with this emissions rate graph, is kind of normalize things. You see the 3 red boxes, the headworks, the north primaries, and the south primaries. Those are the focused early action projects that we're going to be started on once we get this second contract underway, which is item K on a new business item for today. That's roughly 60% of the problem at Town Branch, according to the samples that Webster took. So it is the low-hanging fruit. You might ask, well, what about the solids building? That's over there at 31%, and it's something that certainly needs attention, but it does not run all the time. We don't run solids on the weekends. We don't run solids at nighttime. We only run solids when we're filling trailers and taking them to the landfill, and obviously the landfill isn't open then. So we'll get that one in the future, but to me, it's not the one that we can move the needle on as quickly as we would like to. West Hickman's a little bit straightforward because 66% of it's one thing. It's that dreaded ash tank that I've been working on since October, it seems like. It is 66% of the problem, and it does seem to coincide with what I know operationally has changed at West Hickman for entirely different reasons. So it will be the early action project as well, is to replace that scrubber with new technology along with monitoring that is able to determine when the thing's going sour and when it's not, so we can be more proactive about the way we deal with odors instead of reactive the way we've been over the last couple of months. Same thing with the solids building. It will be the next level. It runs more frequently than Town Branch, but it doesn't run in weekends, nights, holidays, and things like that. That ash tank runs every day, all day. It's the one that really, really needs to go first. So that's what we've been doing with the treatment plant. I don't want to ignore the collection system and the ARVs or the air release valves, because I think collectively all of these things contribute, and I don't want to put all of our eggs in one basket and say that's going to get it and ignore the other things. So what we've done is increase chemical feed rates at certain locations, and we've really engaged our chemical supply vendor in launching a chemical feed optimization plan. We want to feed just the right amount that is able to control the odors and not overfeed it and end up spending money basically flushing it down the sewer. Related to that chemical thing, I've got one example of a deferred maintenance issue that I wanted to show you as well. Okay, not going to make you read a graph today. The red arrow is the main point of it all. This is a location that is the East Hickman force main that comes out behind Veterans Park Elementary School. And in September of this year, you can see that we were averaging about 78 parts per million of hydrogen sulfide at this location. That's in the manhole. What's getting out, I don't know, but in the manhole, that's way above what we would want it to be. Our goal was 10. So with a lot of work over the course of November and early December, we were able to get that number down to the average for this graph is 4.4. And even right before Christmas, we were able to drop down to 0. Now, this will be something we continue to work with on all different locations because it's very seasonally variable. Hydrogen sulfide, which smells like rotten eggs, generates itself more in warmer weather. And so we've got cooler temperatures, not only in the ambient temperatures, but also in the wastewater itself. This will be an ongoing thing that our program manager helps us with in making sure that we're optimally feeding chemical. It's going to be a lot of work at Town Branch. This is inside the Headworks building, the main building at Town Branch. And why it will be more challenging here is because there's a lot of pipeline. The sewage gets delivered to Town Branch differently than it does at West Hickman. West Hickman is largely a gravity system. There's a lot of things that pump directly to Town Branch, to the Leestown Road area, which includes as far away as Picadome, Coldstream, and Hamburg. So they're coming from long distances and stuff, and they all tie together, so there's not a real good sampling point to be able to isolate these things. We're going to have to do a lot of work with that. And again, that's what that consultant's going to help us with. This is back to behind Veterans Park Elementary School where the graph I showed you that we got to 0. I got to meet a lot of people on the trail in the park in October and November. They all had different stories about how odors come about, although they, almost to a man and woman, they said, that thing stinks. And what the picture on the left is a junction chamber that's right behind the school that odor escaped from it all the time. So we came in and we refurbished this thing and sealed it back up. So along with the 0 numbers that we've been getting there recently, I think we've got this kind of thing we need to do in a lot of different places. Seal up the leaks so we get it to the treatment plants or other locations where we can deal with it. Okay, I feel like I'm going really fast because I know you want to get caught back up on schedule and stuff. The next steps is execute a long-term contract with the Odor Control Program Management. That is item K in your agenda for today. What they're going to do is they're going to design and construct treatment plant equipment. The equipment that I had the red boxes around as far as at both Town Branch and at West Hickman. Not more studying, not more data collection. The very first thing they need to do is get these things designed and ready for construction. They won't get there fast enough to probably suit a lot of folks, including myself, including you, and including you. But I at least feel like now we can maybe turn the ship and put some wind in our sails to be able to get to a point to where there's actually a solution. I'm on my last slide here. I'm doing okay, I think. The optimization of the chemical feeds, I need to have somebody that's working with that. I obviously don't want to leave the chemical company that sells us the chemical to be in charge of that, so I want to make sure that we've got checks and balances. There's collection system work that needs to be done, smoke testing. We've got really weird things going on in certain parts of the collection system, and smoke won't lie. We're going to have smoke put in key areas during the summertime to look to see where it comes out, particularly in people's houses. Because if they've got some faulty plumbing and stuff like that, it doesn't matter what we'll do because they will still get odors in their house, and we want to try to identify that. And last but not least is assist us in providing progress reports to interested parties, including the council office, including social media, whatever it is. A consistent message is going to really be critical as we move forward with this. The last thing I'll say is that I've said this to a lot of people over the last couple of months, is that I believe we can do this. If we can do as well with air quality as what we've done in water quality over the last couple of years, we'll get this done. And I really do appreciate there's a lot of people that have been very encouraging and had a lot of patience with this, and I know it tries their patience a lot because it's not something you want to deal with. So.
Thank you, Director Martin. I'm going to start with committee members, so Councilmember Menares.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you, Director Martin, for all your work with this. I really appreciate you, in a timely manner, helping Councilmember Reynolds and I escalate this to the mayor's office. I have a few questions, and I know that some of them are questions that you answered with my constituents, and you've helped me be the face of this issue for hundreds of residents in the 4th District. I appreciate you injecting yourself personally, and like me, making your cell phone available, and just doing all the things to answer all the questions. So originally at West Hickman, we had said that we were going to replace the carbon scrubber. Was that replaced? Was it not? Why or why not?
It was not, because the quote we got for it was $300,000, and as you can see from the graph, it was 4 to 6% of the issue, and this data even came in after that. After we fixed the problem that I had discovered with the steam coming out of it, the sampling that we took there kind of indicated to me that that would not necessarily be beneficial. The other part of it is that Webster was telling us is that in some cases that carbon is not the appropriate application, and I think this is one of them, is that they are inclined to recommend a different treatment device for this headworks, and so the idea of spending $300,000 for something that won't work did not seem like a good idea to me.
Thank you. One of the major recurring questions that I get is regarding health concerns, both because of how long the residents are experiencing this at high levels as far as their concerns for the odor. And then second, part of what we've already said, and even in your presentation, was the treatment and trying to get this under control with added chemicals. And I realize that it's chemicals that we've been using all along, but maybe at increased levels. Can you address those health concerns that residents are having?
The second one's easier than the first one, so I'll work in reverse. The chemical that we're feeding is calcium nitrate and sometimes sodium nitrate. It's a nitrate. As far as its chemical sounds bad, this is probably about as inert as a chemical as you can get. I mean, basically all it's doing is it's lending oxygen to the sewage so it doesn't attack sulfate, because if it attacks sulfate, then it turns into sulfide, which is then rotten eggs. So the actual chemical itself is not a problem. To be honest with you, the bigger problem is the chemical we use in the scrubbers, which doesn't get out anyplace else. But our staff dealing with a very high intense caustic and chlorine mixture solution, that's a problem. I worry a little bit about the long-term viability of using chemical scrubbers. Now, as far as exposure is concerned, you've heard me say this over and over again. I'm not a physician, so it's hard for me to speak to that. I know that different people have different sensitivities to things and have different health issues and stuff. The only thing that I ever point to is that I've known hundreds of people in my career that work at wastewater treatment plants, and I can't say that I know any of them have necessarily experienced health-related issues associated to being exposed to odors that are with sewage. It's offensive. It is absolutely offensive. I get that part of it, but I would just tell somebody if they're concerned about from a health standpoint, they should consult a physician. I'm not qualified to answer that.
Thank you. And then there are multiple increased calls to my office regarding the fact that the smell is now in their home where it wasn't ever before. And at first, we would mention that it might be a plumbing issue with their house, but because of the increased complaints about that specifically, what is our response to that?
Well, I'm worried about that, and like I said, that's why I want to get this smoke testing going soon, because I know some people have done it. They've had a plumber come out and do it. I wasn't involved with it to know whether or not that it was done correctly or not. But yeah, there's several people that talk about that they get it in their house, and most everything you read is that you shouldn't be getting it in your house. If you've got trapped vents, you shouldn't be getting in it. One person told me back in October, and I think I shared this with you, is that the way that it does get in their house is that they open their garage door in the morning to go to work, and then here the odor then works its way in the garage, and they shut it. So now they've got that odor in their garage, but that in itself shouldn't be a constant thing. There's one lady in Cumberland Hill, she emails me on a pretty regular basis when she gets it. She gets it in her house, and in that section of Cumberland Hill has always been bad. That's one of the number one smoke testing things, because there's something else going on there more than this, the treatment plant, I believe. But you know, the smoke testing will be our response to that, is that we'll put out notices to everyone, and obviously the fire department as well, because you don't want to have smoke billowing out of somebody's house unwittingly and not have the fire department know. But that smoke, if it gets in, if we blow it in the sewer and it gets in their house, that is the answer to that.
Thank you.
Okay.
Councilmember Plowman.
Thank you again, Chair, for recognizing me. First of all, let me tell you, the person that you want to have in charge of this is Director Charlie Martin, because we've watched him all these years, and he knows what he's doing. But I know it's been frustrating, because it was early fall last year when we started getting phone calls, emails, and it was kind of like the process of elimination at that point. And it was difficult to talk to our constituents and say, we're working on it, we're working on it, but we really were. You really were working on that. So I applaud you. I think the different steps that you've outlined today makes folks feel better moving forward. I know we told many of our constituents to watch this today for a full overview of what has happened and what will be happening. So to those constituents, thank you for your patience. Thank you for keeping us in touch of what was going on at your different neighborhoods. The West Hickman pretty much is my district area. And is that scrubber, there was something taken care of and it did succeed, or is there still more work that can be done on that?
In my mind, that scrubber doesn't work, and it just hasn't worked. We've had, like I said, a lot of work done to it, and it just doesn't seem to have helped. I even turned it off one weekend, and I let one of the guys that I deal with on a regular basis, also somebody who emails with me pretty regularly, because I thought, well, maybe we're just sucking foul air and efficiently throwing it up in the sky. And we turned it off for the weekend, and we had more complaints than we did beforehand, so I turned it back on. It needs to just be flat out replaced. I think it's undersized and is not capable of performing given the level of odor that gets generated in that facility. I think sometimes when I drive through some neighborhoods, I smell it more than I smell sewage.
And you said that it is going to be replaced. What is the timetable on that?
Well, that is the answer that I can't give today, because you know, it is the number one. It'll be the very first task order that we award to Webster. Number one, they'll probably put a lot of effort to it because they know their client wants that to happen. They will put together a design. We'll get it bid. Then the question is, how long does it take for a contractor to build that and acquire the equipment that they need to have to be able to build that? And in my line of business, that's been hard. I told a lady on Sunday night when I was at her house, unfortunately, the Amazon Prime is not going to bring this and put it on our front porch in a day.
But this long-term odor control team that's coming in will be addressing that. And
yeah, one of the things that I'm glad you brought that up, because one of the other tasks, are there interim temporary measures that can be taken in both plants to be able to bring in maybe skid-mounted carbon units? Yeah, granted, it may not last us for very long, but if they last us through this year to where the complaints that happen in the summer and fall are a fraction of what we had right now, based on my view right now, that's money well spent.
yeah, it is. Well, again, thank you for continually to stay with us and to keep us informed, and appreciate you. And constituents, again, thank you for traveling with us on this because it has been a frustrating journey. Thank you, Chair.
Councilmember Baxter.
Thank you, Chair. Charlie, thanks for being here today and for all your hard work. I know we've dealt with some of the same issues in my district, and I think we've kind of come to our complaints have slowed down, so that's good. But you know, when things break, I guess, if you want to put it that way, we always question what we're doing and if what we're doing is the best option. So as we look at our whole program, and I'm looking at our current, because you kind of blew through it. So on the page that talks about what we're currently using as far as chemicals are concerned,
I'm still getting used to the clicker
I
here.
think it's before. It says, I'll just start talking. So it says underfeeding has odor complaint ramifications. Overfeeding has cost and treatment plant compliance ramifications. What exactly does that mean?
Feeding that chemical costs $2.60 a gallon. No, $2.67 a gallon.
Okay.
And if you're feeding 300 gallons a day, you start doing the math, and it adds up pretty fast. What we're feeding at West Hickman right now, at East Hickman pump station right now, you're probably talking about $140,000 a year just in chemical dosing alone.
So the chemical that we're using, is that our best option? Like, is that, or have we ever tried anything
it's
else?
the competitively bid option.
Okay.
We are, in that, I don't know which slide you're on here, and I'm kind of flipping around here. We are looking at other options that are less expensive. So when I say chemical, and I think I put in parentheses other, because other is on the table, is that, because if we start feeding at those rates at multiple locations, it will become very expensive very quickly. We've found one new technology that, what's not new, I guess, but it's new to Kentucky. Louisville is injecting oxygen directly into a pipeline that's about 12 miles long along the river, and apparently are having success with that. We've had a couple of conversations with them and are looking more closely at that, because that's the capital cost of buying the equipment, but you're only paying for electricity after that. You're not paying for chemical.
So how long has it been since we issued an RFP for these services?
Well, we have not had anybody in charge of odor control probably since before the consent decree started,
Okay.
2007. We have always done odor control improvements when we have upgraded things, such as Councilmember Menard asked about the headworks. That headworks was built in 2018. Those carbon units were brand new, met the spec, everything at that time, the spec that was put out. And so we realized that odor needs to happen. What to me was missing is, on the water end of things, we measure things all the time. That's our compliance measure, is what type of pollutant that we're putting out. Our compliance is not air quality, and so there was not any real, what I would consider to be viable measuring stick to determine what we're really putting out and what we're not. And I said early on, that's going to change. Well, I'm not doing this guessing. I'm not climbing up in a bucket truck anymore either.
Okay. And then I have a question for what's on the work session packet today. Would you prefer that I wait and ask it during work session?
No, and you can ask me again.
Might ask you again. Okay, so my concern, and you can explain why to me, that this item of $550,000 it says there was an RFP. Did we only have one respondent?
No, we had 3 responses.
We had 3 responses.
We had 3 responses. We opened those on the 11th. The work group reviewed them and made a recommendation on the 26th, and it's on the work session for today. We are doing everything we can to fast track it. First of all, that not to exceed $550,000 is incorrect. If you read the memo, the design work for replacing the equipment at both treatment plants is estimated at $550,000. There's additional work that will be issued to them via task order for the smoke testing, for the chemical optimization and all that. And Councilmember Baxter, what we're doing is we're following the model that we used for the consent decree. When we found ourselves in this issue of catch-up, we hired a program manager. Basically, they're the staff that we don't have. They come in, they help us solve all of these issues, because eventually you reach a point that you plane out, then you get rid of the consultant, or you downgrade there. You haven't hired a bunch of people in order to be able to solve what is really a short-term problem. Eventually we'll be coming to you with an annual budget with them, similar to what we do with Hazen and Sawyer, which is also on your agenda for today, what we do with Tetra Tech in the stormwater program, what we do with Stantec in the capacity assurance program. Having a program manager that has people who have not only are experts in that field, but also have additional resources that they can bring to be able to solve the problem for us quickly has been successful for us, and that's what I'm recommending we follow here too.
Okay, I'm out of time, but I will come back to you at work session. Thank you, Chair.
Councilmember Reynolds.
Thank you. I just want to quickly make a few comments. First, I want to thank my constituents again for bringing this to me and before us and kind of heightening our awareness of what was going on. And then wanted to mention, it's not ideal that we found ourselves in this situation and that we had a major issue with air quality. That's not ideal, but what we do have is a plan in place. So like you said, now we're going to be hiring a consultant to come in and give us a long-term plan to deal with the odor. So you had mentioned we haven't had that for a long time, and so now we're going to have that. So I think that that is crucial moving forward in terms of dealing with the odor issue. And then also you mentioned that you wanted to turn this presentation into a YouTube link and have a one-pager. So we will have a link and then a page that we can all share with our constituents to help them understand, what's happening. And then I'm going to ask that we have this calendar year, 2 more updates, one in about 6 months or something that says where we are, and then one at the end of the year, just so that we can keep people informed about how we're moving forward. This is an issue that is really important to a lot of people here in Lexington, and so I hope that we can continue to stay on top of it. Thank you again to Director Martin and to the administration. Thank you.
Councilmember Menares.
Thank you. And thank you again, Director Martin. And my last 2 questions are very short because you've answered most of it when you answered Councilmember Baxter's last question. And because it's coming up again from constituents, because we're hiring a contractor again, and they're concerned over why are there not engineers available locally that we can hire, that we seem intent on giving our tax dollars to individuals who are from out of state. I know that you just mentioned to Councilmember Baxter about the expertise that this contractor brings and why specifically we need them when it comes to odor control.
Well, yeah, we had 3 proposals, all of them very good, and all of them companies that we work with on a regular basis. The selection group, which was not just me, but there were members of the council office purchasing, it was a consensus that this was the best one. As someone on the work group, not me, mentioned, is if you want chicken, you go with the company that makes chicken, and that's what Webster does. This is their core business, is odor control. They do it all over the country, and so I think there was a comfort level with selecting them. They are out of Louisville. The support or their subcontractor is Tetra Tech, who has a local office here in Lexington. So this is not people that are coming in from outside, even though it's not a home-based company in Lexington. It still has an office here that has a long-term base with us. They also have a DBE that is an electrical contractor that's a female business that is located here as well, which I was really glad to see that, because I'm always happy to see solid participation on a DBE level.
And then lastly, with everything that we're doing now and then getting everything to what we would consider optimal, will the smell ever be at 0?
Wow. That's the goal. I mean, it's just like overflows. Every day I get up trying to figure out how us to have 0 to be perfect. And if I don't start out every day that way, then I miss the mark. Will I stand here and promise you that we'll ever be at 0? I can't do that right now, but I'm going to tell you I can do everything that I can that people will say it's a lot better than what it was before, if not that it's perfect. I would love for perfect.
Thank you again, and I just also want to encourage my constituents to continue to reach out with any questions or concern and to continue to report where they smell the smell, at what time, and thank everybody for their patience. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Director Martin. One location for my district I would like to follow up with you on is the Lakeshore Pump Station that went through an upgrade. We've gotten some odor complaints of that particular location. I've talked with Deputy Director Lubeck about it, so I'll just follow up with you.
Okay. Yeah, we still have them. They're not just located at the treatment plants and stuff. Councilmember Gray had contacted me about a lady that's got odor that's out in front of her mailbox. That's one of those air release valves. But it's like 4 miles away from a treatment plant. So we need to attack all of it. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you.